This video, the middle-aged nerds discuss spoilers from books they read decades ago. Do you really need a spoiler alert? Do you really?
Hi, that's Bill.
Hi, that's Glenn. Glenn, Glenn. Yeah,
Over
he's over
here.
there. Anyway, today, welcome to Non-Terrestrial Half-Life. First off, we are going over Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, and joining us is Ryan and BrotherDan from The Way of the Leaf. You too can get this shirt. You just have to go thewayoftheleaf.spreadshop.com.
Great thing.
God.
How are you guys doing?
All right.
Not as good as you look in that shirt. Holy cow.
Why, thank you.
That really does suit you, my friend.
Now, see if you guys had tie-dyed the merch store, I might think about it more.
Oh, there is tie-dye. Trust me, friend.
Really? Okay.
It's that
I don't
option
know
is
the last
there.
time I looked at a merch store, so I'll have to
Like,
look.
Somebody hasn't been to Spreadshop.
No, I'll be clicking on that link. Thanks,
When
Bill.
we eventually do PuppetCon, we will have a tie-dye whole panel where we'll make shirts.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
PuppetCon? LeafCon?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The way of the con.
The way,
Way of the con.
Way of the
Okay.
con.
This is the
Nice.
way of the con.
So yeah, we're discussing Kurt Vonnegut's probably his most famous novel, Slaughterhouse-Five. I mean, there was even a movie that came out in 1972. I just recently watched it, and I understand why Vonnegut said it was flawless. It's pretty amazing if you have a chance to watch it. But what'd you guys think of this book before we take our dive into it?
What did I think of this? I have many thoughts of this. First off, I want to thank you for prompting me to reread this.
You're welcome.
It's in the pantheon of greats in my mind, and I just find the whole thing like just breathtaking in its conciseness and its breadth, like all in one.
Do you think that's what you felt when you first read it?
No, well, when I first read it, like I was pretty depressed, so I was taken by the heaviness of it, and I reveled in that probably. And I don't think I understood, because I didn't understand life and death in any capacity back then. So I think I read it like it affirmed a lot of my worldviews, like depravity of man and how what we do to each other, et cetera, et cetera. And I always felt alien to that. So I related to the character. But I think I was just more like, not finding themes so much as just appreciating tone and obviously there's this humor side to it, but the second read, I feel much differently about it. I have such a deeper appreciation for it.
How about you, Dan?
I have not I've not tried to hide my love for Vonnegut at all. And this is the book that pretty much started a lot of people who read more than one Vonnegut book. They probably read Slaughterhouse-Five, and I think that it kickstarted a lot of people to explore just what this author can do, including myself. This is an author unlike any other that I've ever read. Like I imagine if you put passages in front of me and said, all right, pick out of these five little like 4-paragraph things, which one is Vonnegut, I would be able to picture it, or figure it out. I love the guy. I have a Vonnegut mug here.
The mug returns.
The mug returns. And there's a few of the Billy Pilgrim quotes on here. But this is what I remember from reading this initially was mostly Kilgore Trout. Is like his poignancy when he would say, oh yeah, that reminds me of that Kilgore Trout, or when I picked up that book, it was about a story about Jesus and his father getting a contract to build a cross, and they were happy to get the work.
Or yeah.
Yes, that like stuff like that really like I was like, holy shit, what he did in like 30 words right there is magical to
Mhm.
just the suggestion of this story was magical to me. And so he threw in all these Kilgore Trout suggestions of stories that like these tiny little plot lines that I was like, God, I want to read those books. And so that's what I remember about Vonnegut is like he's just a man of so much ideas and like weird subversive ideas that
Yeah.
made me want to kind of explore. And Kilgore Trout was like my I need to know more about this.
I love the idea of a time traveler going back with the stethoscope just to check to see if Jesus was really dead. I mean,
Yeah.
that little
Yeah.
drop in there, I mean, that is
We learned he was
fascinating.
5'3.5".
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, wow, I'm taller than somebody.
I love these things. So yeah, that's what Vonnegut is to me. And this is the most meta book I think I've ever read. I mean,
Yeah.
we have these little dedications, we have these forwards, like these quote things that he brings up and says, this is where this comes from. This is why I chose to do this. I don't think I've ever seen that in another novel.
Brother Dan,
Yeah.
this is a book about a book.
It's a book about a
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
And then there are
And
many
in a way,
references to books within the books. There's
Cat's
Valley of the
Cradle was
Dolls.
a book
Brothers,
about a book.
what's that?
Cat's Cradle was also a book about a book.
Yeah, this is the second one we've read so far.
Yeah, about the book of Pokemon, all the books.
Yeah.
Well, if you notice, the first and final chapters are straight up Vonnegut. You know,
Yeah.
it's not actually part of the book. It's
Mhm.
Vonnegut talking about it, his experiences and things like that. The first
So
and last chapter.
Yeah. So why do we think Vonnegut? So maybe we should remind the viewer that Kurt Vonnegut himself witnessed the bombing of Dresden. He was a POW captured by the Germans. He was housed in a slaughterhouse 60 feet below ground.
Yeah.
But they thought that Dresden was a peaceful place because quote unquote there were no military arms. There was nothing there for them. It turns out
it was the Venice of Germany. It was gorgeous.
Yeah.
It was the art center of that part of Europe.
Mm-hmm. And it was the first moment of peace. Even though he was a POV, he felt fed and safe.
Yeah.
For brief respite. And then so he did witness all these things. So I wanted to ask, you know, we start the book off and it's clearly from Vonnegut's point of view talking about how he wanted to write about Dresden and he couldn't come up with the words, and he has XYZ experiences regarding it. And then chapter 2 is the book itself. Why would he write a book, creative character named Billy Pilgrim, and then have himself in the book 2 separate times interacting with Billy Pilgrim? We're like, what psychologically is happening for Vonnegut here?
I don't think he could approach it from a first person perspective.
Yeah.
It was too horrific, too painful.
Uh-huh.
Maybe he couldn't find his own voice because he had none at the time that this happened. So he has to approach it from a different character sort of mindset.
I also think
that's what I thought anyway.
To some extent, and the man is known for his wry sense of humor. I think part of it, I think he thought it would be funny to do it that way. In addition to what Bill said, because it does separate, you know, allow him to separate himself from what's happening to the character by not doing it first person. The bad shit that happens to Billy Pilgrim, and the good shit, but mostly bad shit that happens to Billy, it's not his. He can just push it away and let, you know, so he's not taking it onto himself as he writes it. You know, he's getting it out of himself.
Uh-huh.
Right. But he dismisses emotion. You know, he says, so it goes. And this is the idea of Tralfamadorian, Tralfamadorians, not
Yeah, I have a hard time
Tralfamadorians,
with that one.
Tralfamasfarians. That they
The
Sorry.
trauma guys.
that we are all stuck. Every moment is amber. Everything is because it is supposed to happen. We see that we witness the plane crash where Billy Pilgrim fractured a skull, and he knew it was going to happen, but didn't say anything. But
Gets on the plane anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
There's-
it's gonna yes, this whole thing about I mean, we talk about the Wheel of Time, and Ryan and I talk about Rand Thorne, whether as far as predestination and stuff like this. To me, like one of the lines that the Tralfamadorians see humans as millipedes, not as bipeds. They see us with baby feet and end with old man feet, and we're all just these instances, these fractions in time that are all just these a movie is just still frames played fast, and so it seems like that's kind of the mentality, is that we're all just these still frames. Everything is a still frame, and he was just able to, in his, I mean, was this a delusioned mind? So what?
That's my big question, and that's why I don't know yet which way I fall on this, but I don't know that it's science fiction, because while I'm close to accepting the fact that he probably was unstuck in time,
right,
I'm not convinced that he actually was abducted. I think the man was suffering some severe PTSD and might even have had some schizophrenic, because pop in there a little bit. But I think these guys were in his head. That's all they were. I think it was just his delusion. I can't say he wasn't unstuck in time, because he did know his death. He saw his own death. That we know. He was right on that.
Right, which
But
is magic.
there's nothing telling me that that the aliens are real. So I'm not convinced that it's science. It's really science fiction. The unstuck in time, yeah, okay, that's science fiction-y fantasy, but
well, I mean, the fact that he was right about his date of death and how he dies is kind of confirmation that, okay, at least that part is true. The only questionable thing about the being abducted thing is later in the book, when he realizes he read a story that is shockingly similar to his own story of what happens when he gets abducted by Kilgore Trout. So that does bring up that question of it. And he was in a mental institution at the time, so
there are so many ways to looking at this. The first time he gets unstuck in time, he is behind enemy lines, and he's just about to get captured. And up until that point, we have this feckless,
passive,
just passive, feckless, like sexless, brunt of a joke human being who like was almost religious but not really religious, which I want to get back to that theme because that keeps coming back. He was not the pastor, he was the pastor's assistant.
He was the chaplain's aide.
The chaplain's aide, and then he had to go to the front line to take over for another chaplain's aide. So our protagonist Billy Pilgrim, again, what is a pilgrim but a religious explorer?
Right.
He I believe has his first like PTSD disassociation, and that's so and so I believe that every time he time travels he's disassociating, and that has carried with him for the rest of his life. When we see instances of him at work disassociating under low stress situations, he's just he was at a party, there's a barbershop quartet, boom, he travels back in time, and he sees the German officers coming out from underneath the ground, seeing Dresden, and their mouths are open like a barbershop quartet. Every instance of him time traveling, if you look closely, it's related to something going on that triggers it. And I think he is deeply, deeply, and this is impressive to say, this might be one of the most wounded humans I've ever read about. He's like Raskolnikov. If you've read Crime and Punishment,
Yeah.
he's Raskolnikov, but without the murder. He's like the opposite. He's like the non-violent Raskolnikov. Two people just on the very edge. So he starts there, and it continues on and on. I don't believe he's ever seen the future, and I also believe that in his letter saying that he predicts his death, two things. One is he knew that he was in a public situation. He knew that he was within a very short radius of the person who threatened to kill him a long time ago. He basically orchestrated it. So that's one way to explain away his predicting it. But didn't he also predict like China nuked Chicago or something?
He didn't predict it. This was an event, it seems.
Yeah.
So so that was unclear to me if that was actually the case that America had split up and literally China nuked Chicago, or if that was just a failed prediction. Oh, that got weird to me. But
yeah,
he said that America became Baltic.
Yeah, it was basically 50 different separate countries instead of states.
And so, and then you think about what Tralfamadore is, and what I was thinking about what it does for him. Tralfamadore, it provides so many things. It gives him it takes away his free will from him, tells him that there is no free will, which absolves him from guilt, which is a huge issue with survivors of war. It gives him like, what was it, like his manhood back. We're talking about a character who was during the war wearing a dress because that was the only thing they would give him. He was emasculated. He had not even had sex with anybody before the war because someone called him a motherfucker, and he's like, wait, I haven't even fucked anything yet. Great. So, and then it gave him a love of his body again for the first time in his life, which I found really fascinating, because PTSD sufferers feel this kind of floating head kind of phenomenon where they're detached from their bodily sensations. They don't have they either have overly somaticized issues or lack of somaticism, like they're absent from their body. So for him to fall in love with his body again, these are all things that I believe his unconscious mind is giving him to get him through. And it also gives him a worldview which says that you have to only focus on the positive points in your life and ignore the negative points. Which
I don't think I've ever read a protagonist who is so unwilling to participate in his own life. I found it odd that he's so, I mean, from the word go, I mean, even before anything traumatic happens to him, he's more of a just let it carry me where it wants, and I'm not really going to do anything.
Yeah.
And I've never seen that perspective, and I found that fascinating.
If you've ever read Kafka, he reminds me of a lot of Kafka characters, the protagonists in Kafka novels.
I've read one Kafka, and it was actually just this past weekend. I read The Metamorphosis, or listened to The Metamorphosis.
Yeah, Metamorphosis is the only one I read from Kafka.
I recommend. Yeah, we'll talk.
My thoughts on that were WTF.
Yeah, that's actually, I wouldn't recommend that to a first read. That's for Vonnegut. He might feel scooped out, right? He might feel empty. I think he's so effectively writing this attachment that comes from severe PTSD. And it's
Ryan, yeah. I love that point, and it makes me explore some of the books that or the stories that Kilgore Trout himself came up. And so one of them was the Jesus story, obviously. Where, could explore the issues of non-guilt within being a system of a death. But there's also the one where there was a robot who had bad breath, but was like very human like. And all the robots went and they threw napalm down onto people, but it was forgiven because they were robots and they weren't conscious of what they were doing, right?
Right.
But
They have
they
no
didn't want to
feelings,
accept this guy because he had bad breath, but then he corrected that, and then he was accepted as a human.
which is just mind-boggling when you
Which
think
is
about
mind-boggling. Yes,
I
and it
mean,
goes to that guilt, that
Vonnegut,
disassociation from guilt as well.
yeah, Vonnegut really comes up with some.
Yeah. And to talk about that first story with Jesus, like there is a distinct, again, I'm getting now this theme of losing one's religion or religion failing him. Like again, he starts off as the chaplain's assistant. Later on we have reference that, you know, the moment we find him, he is playing hack golf with other optometrists. He
What
does
is hat golf?
hack golf is you just hacking
Yeah,
around.
yeah, he sucks. It took
Okay.
seven hits to get on the green.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so that's hack off, and I thought that was
it's
funny.
me.
And then, but decidedly, he says he stopped going to church a while ago.
Mhm.
These references are important because when he goes to Tralfamador explains to him the problem they have with the Jesus myth. They have this whole breakdown of how you spend the entire book telling us he's a nobody, and then God comes in
Yeah.
and and grants him all the powers of the creator of the entire universe to a bum,
Right.
which is
Love that.
I
It
love it.
came down to don't kill somebody with connections.
Yeah.
It's exactly what he
Which,
says.
and,
He's like,
and it's true.
don't kill somebody with connection.
Yeah,
It's
don't kill
true.
someone with the connections. Yeah, make sure you know who you're messing with, bub, or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's what it
One
basically
of
is
my
boiled
favorite
down
things
to.
about the time travel aspect was the one time that Billy Pilgrim was watching on a screen. It was a war movie, and it was going backwards.
That's my favorite
Yeah.
scene probably ever.
It was unshooting people.
It was yeah, and there. So I have this whole thing here. It was like the formation flew backwards over the German city that was in flames. The bombers opened their bomb bay doors, exerting a miraculous magnetism which shrunk the fires, gathered them into cylindrical steel containers, and lifted the containers into the bellies of the planes. The containers were stored neatly in racks. The Germans below had miraculous devices of their own, which were long steel tubes. They used them to suck more fragments from the crewmen and planes, but there were still a few wounded Americans, though, and some of the bombers were in bad repair. Over France, though, German fighters came up again, made everything and everybody as good as new.
Yes. Keep going.
So good. And it goes back and he's like, yeah, and I assumed Hitler was a baby, probably. The film didn't go there. And we all went back and we all planned as humanity to create Adam and Eve. It says, yeah. Everybody turned into a baby, and all humanity, without exception, conspired biologically to produce two perfect people named Adam and Eve, he supposed.
Right.
So great.
So great.
That
the
reference to
image
baby
of the things just sucking up the damage and saying and fixing things.
I was gonna say it's written so well too. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a poetry in what he's describing almost, where you could literally take this out and it's basically a short poem about reversing the damage done by war. But it's just beautifully written to the point where I listened to that particular passage, I think 5 or 6 times. I kept rewinding and starting it over.
Yeah.
Because it just
as
has
did
this
I. Yeah.
musical lilt to it that sort of grabs on to me.
Well, yeah, and he's so concise. And go back to that word. It's so much of what he doesn't say, and as well as what he does say. Any other author could have come up with that idea and just overly described everything, right? Like you're right, like he's not overly descriptive, and that's one of the things I like about him. Can you even picture what Billy Pilgrim looks like?
That's the thing. He doesn't look like anything. He's a blank slate.
Right.
I don't know if he's a blank slate for us to project ourselves onto, or if it's just
Well,
a Vonnegut.
he is
Blank
described, but
It
he
is Vonnegut.
described.
I know, but it
Well,
just
he's
doesn't
he's
hold.
6'3" with he's 6'3" with a chest the size of a mat, like a book of
Matchsticks,
matches.
book of matches.
Built,
Yeah.
chest and shoulders built like a matchbox.
He also
Yeah, that's all
grows
we
a
have, I think. I don't even know if he
scrubby
has
beard.
brown hair or black hair or what.
But he's
I
such
don't
an empty
remember.
vessel that, there's
Yeah.
not a whole lot to glom
Yeah.
onto.
Well, here, Billy Pilgrim, he didn't even choose Billy. It was told that,
Yes.
Yeah.
hey, no adult keeps Billy.
You
Right.
keep it. Yeah.
He just kind of went with it.
As a
Yeah.
William, I can tell you that's a bad idea. It makes me feel like an infant when people call me that.
Uh-huh.
Only my really close family, including my wife, call me Danny. I'm Daniel from college on.
Yeah.
I always introduce myself as Daniel. I'm Brother Dan. I'm Ryan's brother Dan, because he calls me Dan. He and his friends call me Dan. Grace and her friends call me Danny, and everyone else calls me Daniel. And so, yeah, I got kind of these weird.
Yeah, I think my
Billy
wife
is
is
only
the only person who calls me Billy. Is my
Billy
wife.
only sounds right if it's immediately followed by Bob. Billy Bob. That's an adult.
No.
But
No.
that's an adult, but
No.
Billy's
that's-
a kid.
yeah. I would like to bring up how we just Billy himself, Billy Pilgrim, again, his last name, religious kind of searching, an explorer, or someone who's going to some sort of religious site, like you have a pilgrimage to like Mecca.
Right.
But after everything he witnesses in Dresden, he becomes an optometrist, which is so
which
great.
helps, which is there to help people
Which-
see, right?
Yes.
though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yep. And
the one thing he doesn't want to do is see.
yeah, but he does. I mean, but also like yeah, to bring like the whole beginning chapter, like this is he's trying to write a book, and he had a very hard time writing this book about Dresden. Took him a long time, and then this is the book about the book, like
The way I read-
he's trying to see also. He's trying to see the events clearly in it for what it's done for him or to his life, like the author itself, like
the way I
so
wrote
great.
in my notes, I wrote down while older Billy is trying to help people see clearly, the narrator is trying to help us see war clearly, and that's really, I think, what the heart of this book is, to show us what war. It's an anti-glacier book. Might as well.
There's also that question that the Tralfamadors say there is no why. There is no free will. There is no. Why does this happen? You're amber in time. This just is. There's a quote here. It says,
Yeah.
all time is all time. It does not change. It does not lend itself to warning or explanations. It simply is.
That there's wisdom to be had for thinking that there are like, consequences, or I guess no consequences, depending on how we want to look at it.
And I think it's cleverly done, though, Ryan, because he says it's all fourth dimension. We just don't know yet because it's fourth dimension. But here's another quote where it says, we Tralfamadorians read all situations at once, not one after the other. It says further, there is no beginning, no middle, no ending, no suspense, no moral, no causes, no effect. What we love in our books are the depth of the many marvelous moments seen all at one time. So he's trying to explain fourth dimension stuff.
Yeah. He
like
said, yeah. You see time like a human looks across the Grand Canyon.
See, I think he does end up being religious. It's just his religion is from Tralfamador.
No, I know, and that's what's so great, because like
Yeah.
I wanted to get back the whole vision idea that he is trying to help people see, and then the later he gets, the more and more deranged he becomes. He finds comfort in believing that he is helping. I think the quote is helping other people see the truth about time.
Yeah.
See the truth about so he becomes like a prophet of Tralfamador, becomes more and more, somehow getting success.
To me, that whole scene when when he's talking and he's explaining this, and then tells them that I'm going to be dying, tonight, at this time, and they're all getting no, 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 getting upset. And he's like, well, you haven't been listening to what I'm saying. Really sounds like something out of a religious sermon.
Well, and let's not ignore the fact that he is speaking in front of like a Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, or something.
I don't know how he got
very famous. Yeah.
I don't think it really explains where in time he suddenly became super ass famous, but he's like addressing tens of thousands. I mean, in the high tens of thousands of people.
No, if you compare that to the scene where he's talking to the little boy who just lost his father, I mean, the contrast between those two, I mean, he's given the same message, but I mean, he's completely pulled from his own practice because he's telling this little kid, well, it doesn't matter that your dad died because he's not really dead.
Yeah.
So
and
the idea of that guy becoming that popular, it almost has to be a delusion in that short of amount of time.
I think it was. I don't think it happened.
Did he get shot and killed by that guy? I mean, like, then did all that stuff happen? It becomes more and more unreliable, and that's what we love. He's had his second break.
They more or less give him do like a Robert Kennedy with him. I mean, it seems like where he's addressing people, he says this really poignant thing and then gets shot. And he mentions Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King in this book.
Yep.
So I'm not sure what to do with it, but there's no way that Billy Pilgrim should be speaking in front of a group of people like that. Based on what we see and what we know of him, it doesn't make sense.
No, yeah.
I also don't know how long of the time. What year did he get killed? I don't remember. I didn't write it down.
He was like 40. He wasn't 50. So he was 28, 30, 46, 76, I think, or 1975, 6. It was something like that.
It was mid-70s.
Okay.
So I mean, it can be very real that those passages, his like the late life passages, are the most unreliable of all the narrations. And
I think so.
And reading this whole book from the perspective of Billy as his disease is progressing is fascinating as well, because I don't know how much.
I think it's unreliable from the get-go.
Well, you guys were saying, well, I mean, hey, America split up and China and nuked Chicago. I was like, I don't know if that happened. I didn't read it that way. I thought that's just delusional.
I don't know that we see past Dresden. I don't know that any of the stuff that happens in the rest of the story chronologically after Dresden actually happened or not. I think Dresden, from the cleaning up Dresden and everything he saw before he got repatriated. I don't think anything after that. I think everything after that is quite possibly delusion. From his wife to the plane crash to becoming an optometrist.
Yeah, I mean,
to become an optometrist, he actually has to have some kind of motivation and actually do something.
Well, it was given to him,
and he had a really good staff who more or less took care of things.
But he still had to study, and that's proactive.
Yeah, and he studied at night. And I remember,
and I don't see him as being proactive. I see him as being entirely passive.
Or he's moving along, able to accomplish things, but not able to experience joy out of anything he's accomplished.
Okay.
Or even mention them as an accomplishment at all. He's like, I became an optometrist. Okay.
Also, let's keep in mind he enrolled in optometry school before he was enlisted, and then went back. So it may have been.
I forgot about that aspect.
Yeah.
For me,
no, I mean, again, like, it's so amazing. There's so many like subtle lines that show me just how depraved and beaten and hollowed out Billy is. He had this one line. He was like, I am propelled by dread and absence of dread. Absence of dread means move, or dread means move. Absence of dread means stop. So I stopped. Do you remember this? Like, idea that it's so, like, I've never read anything so stark yet so simply written.
Yeah.
The fact that he had to be threatened in order to move when he was with the other soldiers, goes to show what sort of apathetic state he was really in. And I think in the end, it doesn't really matter if this stuff actually happens or not. Either way, this is Billy Pilgrim's truth in his head.
Yeah.
This is Billy Pilgrim's truth. So, you know, I don't so much hold on to whether it happened or not. I think it's more of a journey into, you know, madness is what I ended up with.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bill. I think that, yeah, this is the guy who ends up not really taking care of himself. A rat had chewed through the thermostat. He was in a cold house.
Yeah, didn't even notice.
His feet were blue and ivory, like
all the
dead
time.
They had a couple of times we saw.
So
Mostly on
yeah,
dead
this
people.
is someone who was kind of turning it just time traveling, as he's called it. But this was, he had addressed mental issues within himself before by checking into a hospital that he could leave anytime he wants. It's just there for support, and he didn't leave for 6 months. So I think that I tend to think that all this stuff is fake, except besides Dresden. And so to your point, Ryan, the nuclear bombs, the United States being divided up, none of that happened. None of it happened.
You don't think he had a daughter?
I think he had a daughter who would come in, and yeah, I think so.
So he had a
I think
wife.
he had his 2 kids and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
How about optometry?
And I think his son is the Green Beret, and I think, you know, but that's what
Did he end up rich? Did he end up rich?
I think so. I think so. I think that
if you listen to his delusions, yes, I mean, if somebody who commands that much of an audience, you know, he's got to have some pull, sway, and a little bit of cash.
But he just got nuts, and then went did a weird diatribe in the paper that his daughter's like, "What the fuck is this?"
And
then he goes to New York and goes on a radio station pretending to be, what were they pretending to be?
Literary critics.
Oh, by the way, a literary critic.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the death of the novel.
So
that is more meta than anything too, because this is what he was doing. Anyways. Yep. And then he's like, yeah, okay. And then just went on about Tralfamadore and about the war and all this stuff, and was escorted out the first commercial break.
Yep.
That I think is all true. He's nuts. He can't handle things. He went to go talk to even in the beginning, he goes and tries, not him, the author goes to try to go talk to his buddy about this stuff, and he's like, his wife is like, no, it is like the gatekeeper for her husband, and that's who the book is dedicated to, this woman Mary O'Hara, who was the wife of his old war buddy, who was like,
right,
so mad at war.
Yeah, he promised if he ever wrote a book about war,
you were just kids,
he wouldn't glorify it.
And so that's why it's called the children, subtitled the Children's
Crusade. Yeah.
A Duty Dance with Death.
A Dirty Dance with Death.
Yep. That's the term, duty dance. What do you think he's meaning by that? I don't know what a duty dance would be.
Well, look at all the side characters that were around, right? Who Billy Pilgrim was, Roland Weary. It was, I think, the typical American soldier compared to Billy Pilgrim, right?
Yeah.
And blamed Pilgrim for his death. When I hear that term, that's who I think of. Is that
for me? I think they kind of go together. A duty dance would be okay. Basically, you're given an order to dance. You're not told how to dance, what beat or anything. You're just told to dance, and you're expected to bust out your dance right then and there. That's why it's a duty dance. You know, I think it's relating back to his military experience. Go here, do that. Don't ask questions.
Gotcha.
It's a duty dance.
Yeah, I would take dance more like a tussle.
Yeah,
like Dance of the Devil. Like I don't imagine. I don't literally think that a Dance of the Devil means like you're tangoing with the devil. I think it's more like all the decisions you make, in that endeavor. So I duty dance. aren't these people enlisted? They had
Well,
no
but
choice.
Ryan, there was a mention about the actual Children's Crusade, right? So it was.
Oh yeah.
The Pope had, or a king had said, "Oh yeah, all these kids were gonna go. They were gonna fight." But they ended up, half of them drowned on the way, and the other half were sold into slavery in North Africa. And that, just I think the equation between that and World War II, where these kids, these babies, as Mary O'Hara says, were being thrown into war. And in fact, when the thing goes backwards in time for Billy Pilgrim, that film, the soldiers take off their uniforms and become high school kids. And then it keeps going backwards. And he mentions that. And that's, let's think about it. These kids were like 19.
They're all children.
They're all children.
And World War II was a crusade.
My youngest kids are 19 now, and I cannot imagine them trying to kill people or trying to stay alive while others are trying to kill them. It's just not fathomable to me.
Didn't Roland Weary kill a 14-year-old fireman?
I don't remember.
On accident?
Someone did. I don't think it was. It may have been Weary.
It was Roland Weary. Yeah, it was that guy. And like that, just very subtly, like, hello, 14-year-old fireman.
After the train.
What's that? No, he just talking about his backstory. Like,
and his backstory. I don't remember.
Yeah, there was a little mention of that, and he could have been him.
It's just so subtle, like the 14-year-old fireman. God damn it, sign of the times. 14, right?
Yeah, I think he's going over his ability to exact vengeance on those who that wrong him, and he makes that claim. I think that he had done that. He had exacted vengeance on somebody.
So here's the next question for you guys. Listening to this, reading this book this time around, did you run into anything that wouldn't, quote, fly today if somebody was to try to publish it? Like perhaps language or concepts? Like a concept right off the bat is calling the Bell telephone operator. That is a completely lost to time.
Right. Calling him saying, "Operator, can you find John Smith on Main Street?"
That's gone.
How about this? He was talking about his daughter, his adult daughter, and he said, the stress of losing her mom and having a father who's lost his mind has made her a bitchy flibbergewidget.
Did you Google that?
Flibberty-gibbet.
Flibberty-gibbet. Okay.
Yeah.
I did not Google it. Although I did. I had to Google Putuit.
Putuit? Oh.
Putuit?
And did it say Vonnegut's phrase for a bird?
Yeah, it's just nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just I was like, shit. I think I used to think it was a French phrase or something that I didn't understand. So I just kept all right, well, I'm not going to get that point.
All right. So I did Google the term gollywog.
I looked that one up too.
And so gollywog, and I'm not saying it offensively, but apparently it does hold offensive.
The dolls called gollywogs.
Doll, like the obvious, like Al Jolson blackface, but they're doll type things.
Yeah.
So that's but I honestly, I think it was used correctly. It wasn't used offensively in its usage, and I wasn't real. There was a couple terms. There was a couple times where people from Poland were referred to with a hard CK at the end, which it's. We don't use that term now, but I don't know how offensive all these things were, and I wasn't really turned off too much. I wish his wife wasn't a large woman. I don't see why that was really part of her character, her eating candy bars and stuff. I wasn't grasping why that was naturally a part of Valencia, but it is what it is. But I could have done without.
She's also described as being ugly, even for her size, if I remember, though.
Right,
But yeah, it did bother me that the whole
dim
thing about
woman,
her
and that's
size.
fine. Yeah, but
yeah, but I mean, but Dan, hey, we go to Tralfamador, you get a porn star
Yeah,
who
apparently.
wants to have sex with
and
you
again,
within a
that's
week.
that big
Within
fantasy,
a
right?
week. Yeah.
Yeah, within a week.
Took long enough.
Her name's Montana, right?
Yeah, large tracts of land.
And it's funny that he actually ended up finding a blue film, is what he calls it, with her in it
Yeah,
Mm.
when he goes to New York.
But she's perfect though. When he comes back out, she's like, "Oh, were you time traveling again?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't." She's like, "You weren't in Dresden this time. I could always tell." She's the perfect partner.
Yeah.
that's kind of what makes me think he
yeah.
had a delusion going on there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So many different things. So
Thank you.
one is when I don't know if you guys caught this when he first sees Tralfamadorians, his first words were, "Why me?" And he says, "Oh, okay." That's what he asked the German soldiers when he was getting off of the train. He said, "Why me?" And they, or when he either getting off or getting on, and he said, "Why me?" And then the soldier
I
says,
didn't
"Why
catch that.
anybody?" Yeah.
Was
So
it him? I thought it was someone else.
there are these parallels with
It was somebody. I think it might have been somebody else, but it's still, regardless, there was still
By
the
me?
question
By
was asked,
anyone?
why me?
Oh
Why-
yeah, it
yeah.
was the guy who got his teeth broken in
Yeah.
because the soldier could understand English and he just said, fuck these guys or whatever he said, and the guy broke out his two front teeth. He's
Yeah.
like, "Why me?" He's like, "Why anyone?"
Yeah.
So yeah, and then they're all those types of things clue me in. Because again, like I re-listened I re-listened to this twice to get ready for this. And then the first time I missed it. So now I'm on my third reread when I finally picked up on the different connections between what's triggering him,
Right.
why he's triggered. And it's actually clearer and it's not that complicated if you try and look for them. They're all there. And all the things like he experiences on Tralfamador, again, he read in a freaking book, like in his most deranged time when he's in a mental hospital. He's introducing these concepts and
The
they
big
are very
board.
meaningful. Yeah.
It's a Kilgore Trout book as well.
Questionable whether, here's a good question. Did he actually meet Kilgore Trout? Are they actually friends?
No.
Yeah, where Kilgore's like following him around.
Yeah, no.
No.
Like he's
I don't
bringing
think so.
Kilgore Trout to social parties and Kilgore is impressed with his friends. Yeah, I don't. It's really fascinating.
And is killing
Maybe that's
it.
how he
Yeah.
got famous. Kilgore
How would
helped.
What degree is this book similar then to like The Secret Life of Walter Mitty?
I've never read that.
All right, are you familiar with it, Bill?
Yeah.
It's more or less
they even made a movie out
this
of it
guy
with,
is shopping
Ben
with his
Stiller.
wife. He's sitting there and he's just suddenly he's a hero in World War I. He's doing other things. He's a pirate, I think, at one point. He's like going through just these scenarios to get out of his mundane life. I mean, it's not mundane life that Billy Pilgrim may be trying to get away from, but is Tralfamador, are we agreeing that this is all creative in his head and does not exist on any realm at all?
Yes.
I think so.
Because we got all the clues about,
Yes.
he first read the book when he had his first breakdown and was committed. And I mean, the details in that book are so close to his own story. Glenn, you have the particulars on what was it?
Yeah, it's called The Big Board.
Yeah, it's the same story though. And I
Yeah,
mean,
because it was about an Earthling man and a woman who were kidnapped by extraterrestrials. They were put on display in a zoo on a planet called Zircon 212.
yeah,
Direct quote from the book.
he just changed the name.
Yeah.
And Kilgore Trout does exist in other books within Vonnegut's universe. I like the Vonnegut verse. It's like, these things reoccur. Kilgore Trout just kind of pops back in it. And there's a book that's heavily Kilgore Trout based. I don't remember which one it is, but he's
I think that was,
I like
Like
these
our
recurring uses of
next
this.
book, Breakfast of Champions.
Is it
Breakfast of
Breakfast of
Champions,
Champions?
yeah,
Okay,
I
cool.
think so.
I
I
love
know
that.
he's in that. I know he's in that one.
So it's said that so when Vonnegut was writing initially, he started off writing for magazines. He would submit to different magazines. Either they would accept it and pay him or return it and say no thanks. And it's said that Kilgore Trout is Vonnegut, like his magazine writer, saying, "Oh, how about this? Just doing like little, 3,000. I don't know how many words, 3,000 words, 4,000 words, like these things for Vanity Fair or something that he would think of and say, well, I can't do that anymore. I'm a novelist, but I'm gonna have Kilgore Trout do it."
Yeah.
The guy who you can only find his books in like smut shops.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they're window dressing.
Yeah, with fly shitting on it.
Yeah.
So Billy Pilgrim shows Kilgore Trout to be a big hypocrite as well. So
Yeah.
not only does he say, "What are you, some kind of gutless wonder?" And then there was that gutless wonder book about the robot who wanted to become a human. But there's there's another one where he says, "You think money grows on trees?" And he wrote a story.
Money tree, yeah.
It says,
Money
quote,
Tree.
Trout, incidentally, had written a book about a money tree. It had $20 bills for leaves. Its flowers were government bonds. Its fruits were diamonds. It attracted human beings who killed each other around the roots and made very good fertilizer. So it goes.
I don't think that makes him
Oh.
a hypocrite.
That's a flesh eating
No,
tree.
he said,
right
"Do you
there.
think money grows on trees?" And no, I mean, it is hypocritical. Sure.
He's just referencing his own stuff.
What are you, some kind of gutless wonder?
He's selling his own work, man.
Yeah, it's subliminal marketing.
Yeah, I
There
guess
you go.
so. I guess.
So-
Hey, aren't you thirsty for a Coke?
Why, yes, I am.
I guess.
Other than the stuff we've already talked about, what are some other themes that you picked up on in this?
I mean,
We kind of touched on I think he's pretty dismissive of organized religion, if not all religion, but at
Yeah.
least organized religion.
it's about as anti-war as you can get, theme wise. And I mean, yeah, that basically is your theme. Everything is a setup and a payoff for that message.
I agree with you. And in fact, I was thrilled in this reread too. There were a couple of things like that Truman had described them bombing Hiroshima. And that speech is word for word, and it's about 2 pages of this speech of him explaining why they did it and what it's meant to accomplish. And it's the use of these things are so poignant. The every character is a representation of war of some point, and this is him responding to. I mean, it's called the Children's Crusade. This is him responding to this this generation that had to go through this stuff, that had to take boots off of dead people, that had to where the more capable scouts go off and 20 minutes later they're killed and Billy Pilgrim is not.
Right.
The randomness, the horror, the discomfort, the unfairness, like all this stuff, everything is kind of exemplified as far as it being anti-war. So Billy, you couldn't be more right.
Thank you, Danny.
In my opinion, that this is the strongest, and this is take in mind where he mentions Vietnam. He mentions that this is now there. We have not learned these examples, and Vietnam is happening, and here we go again.
And the author,
Children's Crusade.
Even with all that, the author still says he agrees with that guy who told him he might as well write an anti-glacier novel. You
Mhm.
know, he agrees that that's true.
Well,
And then,
Famidorians say also that, hey, we've seen the end of the universe, and don't worry about it. The Earth isn't involved.
yeah,
I love it.
except
It
we get
doesn't.
wiped out too.
He's like, yeah, you're not worth mentioning in that aspect.
Right. It reminds me of Douglas Adams saying the Earth harmless, and then it was amended to
Mostly harmless. Yeah, I love that. Don't forget your towel.
Yeah,
Right?
and yeah, speaking of that, they said, yeah, like we know how it ends, and they're researching how to like a new form of power. They push the button, everything is gone. And then he says, why don't you stop it? We never stop it. It always happens. He always pushes the button, everyone's
Mhm.
always gone.
Mhm.
There's no more nihilistic concept as that. Like this is like
It's
the
very
story
human.
of, like a human being with who probably is all full of piss and vinegar and hope just becomes like a depraved nihilist.
So it goes. I mean,
So
that
it
is
goes.
the phrase that we hear over 100 times.
106 times.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes. That's yeah. Someone dies. Even the champagne is flat and is dead. So it goes.
So it goes.
Yeah.
Yep. Champagne
Tastes
is
like
flat,
7
is
Up.
dead. His wife
The
dies.
water is dead. The bubbles are trying meekly to leave.
Yep.
So it
So
goes.
good.
It's
Mhm.
so bleak. I mean, this is a pretty bleak novel.
And absurd.
I don't know if I know of a better a user, a sparse user of adjectives. There's not a ton of adjective use here, and when it is
No.
used, it is used
To
with
great effect, yeah.
effect that
Right.
I remember a lot of people being able to do it.
That's a hallmark of Kurt Vonnegut, though, and I'd say also we mentioned earlier Hemingway. You know, I don't know if Hemingway even knew what an adjective or an adverb was.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
but
but
you notice more when they do use them. So
Yeah.
they were
Mhm.
they were
Exactly.
able to wield it correctly.
yeah.
Mhm. Yes.
How did he put it? He said someone's feet were turning into blood pudding.
He dies in the
Yes.
train from gangrene from his feet,
So it goes.
which is just horrific. But
Yeah.
so it goes.
So it goes.
Of course,
Yeah,
that's a
and that's
most-
another thing is a lot of the people we meet do die in this book.
Just about everybody.
I love how Vonnegut, I think it's twice, interjects himself with the phrase, "That was I, that was me, that was the author of this book."
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
It's an interesting way to narrate things when you have such an intimate knowledge of Billy Pilgrim. This author is not he is omniscient, but he shouldn't be. He's just a dude, in the same car. He's just another private going through this type of thing, and yet he can tell when Billy Pilgrim jumps to the 60s, jumps back to the 40s, jumps pre-birth, post-death, these weird things. Is the author has this weird access to this guy, and yet puts himself physically as a human in this situation where he's like, yeah, I was that soldier who was shitting out his brains, and I go, yep, there they go too. That was that was me. I was that soldier. Yeah.
Yep.
There's my brains.
That's the one that stuck in my head.
Yeah,
When,
that outhouse scene was rough.
Yeah. What was the other scene where Vonnegut stuck himself in? To Billy.
He says, an American named Billy wailed that he had that was the excretion one. The other one was where he he was in when Billy was trying to sleep and people wouldn't like sleep with him because he
'cause
was
kick 'em
screaming and
stuff.
kicking in his sleep.
Okay.
And I think it was around that. It was in that car,
Okay.
that rail car. So I think that was the scene that he was there as well.
Uh-huh. For me, one theme besides all the other ones I've brought up, lack of loss, like religion failing him, Tralfamador being his unconscious. There is a deeply like profound like whole person who starts off as Billy. Like Billy Pilgrim was a kid, and I want to remind everyone that the medical doctors in the mental hospital thought the whole reason he was there is because his father threw him in the pool and then took him to the top and then took him to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, in the pool, he
Which
was
is-
he was gonna drown unless he was pulled out. And
Yeah,
he
so
was
his-
fine with it, and he was mad.
Yeah. So it's that I'm so glad he added that. That was not necessary. Like we don't need to know anything about him as a child. He could that humanizes Billy and makes it I think even like a sadder story, in a
Yeah.
way. Because he was like doomed from the beginning. Like he was like we're seeing a lot of people showing a lot of resiliencies throughout the war stories, and Billy is not resilient.
No.
Billy
Well,
is the
Ryan, let me
opposite.
remind you how he responds to his mom visiting him in the hospital.
Yeah, he hides. He says they got
He
sicker until she
hides and
left.
puts a sheet over his head until she leaves.
Uh-huh.
Thing I'd like to point out about Billy Pilgrim, we already talked about his last name. I pointed this out to Bill last week. Billy is short for William. And another name for somebody named William is sometimes Will, So, and we're dealing with not a free will, or free Billy. He's in prison. He's stuck in this hell versus it's a pun on free will versus predestination. Basically, is what I'm getting at. Is there's a pun there? I think with the name, because Billy is anything but free will. And he has anything but free will, or at least he seems to have anything but free will. So,
Well, he believes that. Doesn't
I,
necessarily make it true.
true. It seems like he does, and that's why I said seems.
Yeah, but
He behaves as close to a human can be, who has given up all concept of like showing autonomy or putting himself out there and taking risks. Like, yeah,
He lets the world
he's that
steer him.
yeah, he's a feckless, meek, like passive person who just happened to marry someone who knew was going to help him like feel comfortable in life.
yeah.
You know,
I mean, he is textbook absolute just inertia, not moving at all, just
Yeah.
sitting still throughout life, where he doesn't have any self-preservation. We found that out, and we get that first with his dad chucking him in the pool. I think from that moment on, he hits a point of apathy that he just doesn't care, and he's not going to make an effort at all.
Yeah.
And that's just heartbreaking. And like I said, it's bleak. It is a bleak novel. You get to the end of it, and like I said, on one hand, I enjoy it, but on the other hand, I don't know how to feel about it.
interesting, really.
I'm gonna have to sit with it a while to really come to some sort of hardcore decision on how I feel about it. I mean, because when I finish, I'm like, that was entertaining, but at the same time, so gut wrenchingly awful.
Mhm. Yeah.
What we're seeing, like to me, so let's look at literature as like a dance. And what we're seeing is interpretive dance of like this slow build of weird interchanging forms and moves. The way that he blends things, it's like you just see, let me change metaphors. You just see kind of strings going through yarn, and suddenly an image pops up, and why are you putting red in here? Oh, because the red blends with this because it's this. And he is just creating this really elaborate blanket of story within these very simple means. I'm always taken with how easy it seems to be a writer when I read.
Yeah.
He makes it look, again, it's like an actor, like a gymnast doing cartwheels, and you're like, shit, I should be able to do a cartwheel, man. That looks, you just do that and you just do that. And his writing is graceful and simple, deceptively simple. So it's like you do a step, but he does it like a dancer does a step. So it's smooth as opposed to clunky. Everything he does is like Michael Jackson.
It's elegant in its simplicity. I think that's what makes it so awesome.
Mm-hmm. And like some of the most visual metaphors you'll ever have. Like he described when they first set off in behind enemy lines, and they're in single file, and they're in the snow, and he first calls them unfortunate animals, and then says that they're leaving tracks in the snow as clear as steps on a like a training like a dance instruction manual.
Yeah.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Step slide, step slide.
Mm-hmm.
Booty dance.
So good.
These are metaphors I've never. I mean, like that level of writing like metaphor is just absolutely next level, and he does it every page. There's something described in a way that I've never heard described in that way.
Right. And then he'll bring things back in. So you'll like he'll introduce this little limerick. My name is John Johnson. I work in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And then like 200 pages later, he'll just kind of throw this in, and you're like,
my name is John Johnson.
See, you didn't forget. You still there was a reason you brought this in. He's good about bringing things back in to me. Like he ties all the knots.
Mm-hmm.
There are no loose ends with the Vonnegut story.
Like he's making a cat's cradle.
Yeah.
Oh, look at you.
It just kills me.
So that's fascinating. Like the book is ostensibly like all over the place, and this conversation has become like all over the place. And I hope the viewer understands. Like we like there's no way we can give the experience to you besides like joyfully talking about it, and then hoping that you go out and read it yourself, whether it's the first time, hopefully not at this point in the conversation and I've not read the book, but or you want to reread it. We've all been probably re-enlightened by rereading, and I hope we're not putting anybody off by this kind of a spastic conversation, as spastic in time as Billy is, but
we've become unstuck.
I'm going to re-listen to it probably next week.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I said, I enjoy it very much. It's just so dark and heartbreaking that at the end I'm like, I don't know how I feel right now, other than the joy of the story is one thing, but it's man. It's sitting there and I don't know what to do with it yet. You know what I mean? But I like that. The fact that he can get me to that point where, I'm sort of stuck and working out my own feelings is a beautiful thing, because I have feelings, and, somebody writing words gave me that. And that is, I think that's one of the biggest compliments you can give an author is you made me feel. Doesn't matter what you felt, you made me feel.
Yeah, definitely.
How many times did you laugh out loud, though?
A few times, actually.
At least three.
I didn't count. I didn't count. We've already sort of started answering my last question for everybody. Obviously, you would recommend this to others to read. Yes. Is there anybody you wouldn't recommend it to, like an age group or anything like that? And I don't mean I'm not talking anybody under 15. I'm not going to suggest anybody under 15 read this unless their parents are okay with it.
I don't know. It depends on the kid.
Yeah,
honestly, I don't find anything inherently or overtly offensive that I would try to shelter like a 12-year-old who had a high reading capacity from. But I think that, I mean, as a lot of people have read this as high schoolers, sometimes like junior year, maybe sometimes you got to read something like this or something.
Yep.
I think the experience is much different as you are reading it, as Vonnegut calls himself an old man with his memories and his pack of Pall Malls, like he is in a reflective state in this book, and so it is different than what a high schooler can necessarily take in. I
I
read
know
Red Badge first.
Slaughterhouse-Five is, I think, the number 23rd or 24th most, or on the list of banned books in the United States,
Yeah, I don't
So
get
it
that.
goes.
according to one of the videos I watched about it. It's somewhere in the mid 20s. You know, it's banned a lot, challenged a lot in schools.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
get that. I mean, something like Lady Chatterley's Lover, I could understand for like
yeah,
maybe a junior high or high school library. But I mean, this,
Yeah.
claimed the what they used as their argument, I think, tends towards the sex stuff. The politics side of it is really the heart and underlying reason why some of these places they wanted to ban it, because but
Mm-hmm.
they used the sex, the bits of sex stuff in there as the reason that they used to scare parents.
Oh, boo.
Yeah.
When here's an interesting, again, I had mentioned that this was one of the more meta books I had read, right? As far as like being self-referential. In the first chapter, the author is talking to someone at a party, and he's telling him the premise of his book, and he says, quote, "I think the climax of the book will be the execution of poor old Edgar Derby." I said, "The irony is so great. The whole city gets burned down and thousands of people are killed. And then this one American foot soldier is arrested in the ruins for taking a teapot. And he's given a regular trial, and then he's shot by a firing squad." Said O'Hare, "Don't you think that's really where the climax should come?" "I don't know anything about it," he said. "That's your trade, not mine."
Mhm.
And guess what? It is just a one sentence thing. I mean, they reference poor old Edgar and that he does get shot, but it's one sentence at the end. "Oh yeah, and he stole a teapot and was executed." That's it.
And that's based on a real life
Yeah.
thing.
It's
Completely,
so
yeah.
weird. Yeah. And he said, yeah, most of this stuff's true, including this guy, including this, including this. Yeah. It's such
I'd
a
like to find
weird
out
book.
the real story behind that. Anybody have any last words you want to give?
No,
Uh,
just reread. The classics are there for us to relive over and over again. And as we get older, our appreciation of something that we've read in prior lives really have hit home in different ways. So yeah, I want to just thank you guys, really, like Slaughterhouse-Five. I don't know if I would have picked it up just on my own, and I'm grateful, and it's reigniting my love for Vonnegut, and I do believe I'm just going to go back and reread every Vonnegut.
Oh, it's so good.
That's
yeah,
a good
me too.
idea.
I don't think I
I will
properly
say, I
appreciated
echo
them.
Ryan. I thank you so much for letting us be a part of this and giving us the opportunity to revisit really some really great books. Vonnegut is untouchable in the canon of American literature, and I'm enjoying it immensely. I enjoy you guys a great deal, and I like being able to just talk books, man. This is what we started our show about, because we like talking about books.
Right.
So yeah, I would say, yeah, Vonnegut, the part of this book was that you never die in moments in time in general. And I still hold dear many people who I can't see physically anymore through moments in time that I've had with them in the past that I can't have in the future. And so there's some parts of this that is really poignant that, yeah, no one is ever truly dead as long as they're a part of you, or a part of your experience, as a part of, recognize who things that happened before. They're not gone, they're just, you just can't see them anymore, but they still made impact, their handprints in cement, and that's so they're not gone. It's just different. And so yeah, to a certain degree, it's like yeah, so it goes, but there
So it
we're
goes.
still there. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I also, I think my younger life reading Vonnegut, I didn't really appreciate what I'm appreciating now about Vonnegut, and I found almost like a whole new aspect of him I never recognized before, and now I'm sort of invested. And I'm like, ooh, what's next?
Same here.
He throws so much of himself into his books that it seems like we're reading fictional journals, like they're all NPCs to his own journals to a certain degree. He's expressing himself, and later in life he gets mad at getting old. He's fighting against the dying of the light. He's like, this is sucky. I don't like being, having to get up 4 times to piss, and he writes a book about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
understandable.
thank you guys for joining us tonight. That was fun. This has been a blast. I'm looking forward to 3 weeks from now when, for those of you at home who didn't know, in 3 weeks we'll be discussing Breakfast of Champions, our third book in the series on Kurt Vonnegut. We might hit some more Kurt Vonnegut in the future, but I'm hoping to get these eyes on for some other stuff eventually, maybe. Please come back then in 3 weeks. Thanks for watching. I wanted to say farewell, hello, and don't forget to be awesome.